Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode that we're recording. I have a very special guest today, Kia Scherr. She has spent 20 years studying, practicing, and teaching at this Sanctuary Holistic Retreat Center in Virginia, United States. After her husband and 13-year-old daughter were killed in Mumbai terror attack in 2008, she co-founded One Life Alliance to teach peace education programs based on love, compassion, and forgiveness. Kia spent 6 years in Mumbai working with business educationalists and the police. She's out with a new book, Forgiveness is a Choice. Kia, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
I actually want to start with the book. I would say, in time when it's such radical, polarized world where there's so much hate around, this book gives you a certain, as you mentioned in the book, a crack where the light pours in and you see a bright side of things as well. It's a radical thought at this time where you're talking about forgiveness, especially in such a environment where there's so much polarization. Tell us a little bit about your story, a little bit. I want to go about a little bit about the moment where you lost your husband and your 13-year-old daughter actually in the attack. Tell us about that period, and we'll come across to the idea of forgiveness.
Okay. My husband and daughter and I had been living, at that point, we'd been living for 11 years at a meditation sanctuary in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. And Naomi had grown up there and was homeschooled and also attended a private school for a couple of years. And she was in the process, as she was becoming a teenager, of applying to a top girls' boarding school in New York. And they wanted to, the spiritual director of that sanctuary, Master Charles Kennan, had his spiritual training and study awakening in India, outside of Mumbai at Ganesh Puri Ashram. And so he wanted to bring a group of his people to Mumbai to share modern meditation in the form of using meditation technology to create the balance and harmonic coherence that happens in traditional meditations that involve chanting and mantras. So he had a sound technology, and they were going to bring that, have their satsangs, and the people, there are about 25 people from the United States, Canada, and Australia, a couple from New Zealand, as part of this group. And my husband had been to India earlier in the year to book a location where people could enjoy walking around and visiting temples, and they were right on Marine Drive. And so he chose that location for this group. And this was a special educational opportunity for Naomi. So she was sponsored to go by one of our friends so that she could have this experience. And she was going to create a special report, photojournalism report for her application for her school. So I did not go with them. I was coming to Florida, which is where I am right now, to visit my family for our American Thanksgiving. So I arrived a day or two before, and I had dropped them off 10 days before that at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. So we had a big three-way hug, and that was the last time I saw them. Last time I spoke to them, Naomi was excitedly telling me about her nose piercing because she'd been begging for some kind of piercing, as she was a teenager after all. And we finally said, when you're in India, you can get a nose piercing. So the concierge at the Oberoi kindly arranged for someone to come. Beautiful job. She sent me a photo, and she was just radiating with joy over that. So I came to Florida, and I did not get an email from them that morning. And that afternoon, my mother and I were preparing tea and some snacks to watch Oprah Winfrey on television. And that's when the first phone call came to tell me that the Oberoi was being attacked by terrorists, which was just like, no, that can't be. We thought, no, that can't be. Turn on the news. So turn it on, and there it was. So we saw the smoke coming out of the Taj, which everybody has seen. Thought, oh gosh, where are they? We did not have cell phones. We were hoping and praying they were safely in their rooms. Later, we got a call saying everybody in the group had been accounted for. They were in their rooms or they had escaped the hotel, but Alan and Naomi were missing. I was told they were last seen in the restaurant, hiding under a table. So we posted photos on CNN in case they were injured, unconscious in hospital with no ID. So their pictures started going out over the media. Called the State Department, let them know I had family members. Thanksgiving, which is Thursday, came and went. And then it was Friday morning at 6 a.m. when I got the call from the US consulate in Mumbai. And she said, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Scherr, basically, and told me that it was confirmed that they'd both been shot and killed in the restaurant.
Yeah. And when 26/11 happened, I was around the same age as Naomi was, actually around 10, 12 years old. And
so young. Oh, so you watched it? Do you remember seeing it on the news? And
I remember seeing it on news, and I was a young kid as well. I never understood at the speed of time, but I've heard stories from my friends of people who have lost their parents or their close ones. And when you grow up and you hear about people who have committed violence, there's always this anger. But in the book, you mentioned about when you saw the picture of one of the lone surviving terrorists. The words that came out was "God forgive him." Is that it's not a natural reaction you get when you lost a loved one? Where did that come from?
Well, I was really in a state of shock. Nothing, it hadn't quite sunk in, but my heart was ripped open. And so there I am staring at a photo of a young man who was about the same age as my sons. I had sons right around that age. And right away, I went into compassion, like, how could this have happened to him? How could he have got to this point? I mean, think of, he had been so disconnected and dehumanized to be able to carry an AK-47 into a restaurant. No, he actually was not in the hotels. He was in the train station. But to go to a train station with innocent people, men, women, children, all over the place, some fellow Muslims, they weren't discriminating at the train station. It was Mumbai. Mumbai people living their lives, going on with their business. So I was just like, whoa, what caused that? And so I zeroed into that disconnection, and I thought, there's already too much hatred. I'm going to send love. I'm not going to contribute to the hate. I will not join the terrorists in the hate. I will not. And otherwise, I would then be held hostage by this event for the rest of my life. And I'd be living my life with hatred and anger and revenge. We could never, ever, nothing will ever justify this. Now, the forgiveness was an act of really self-love, so that I could free my heart to bring love to the situation and the world, and to help prevent acts of violence and terrorism, because it was an extreme lack of love that led to this event. Nobody who planned that was being loving. Nobody planned it. Nobody carrying that gun had love in their hearts. Wow. no love in their hearts, the exact opposite, no room for love. They kill their fellow human beings. This life we share is sacred. And they were dishonoring the very essence of what it is to be human, the very essence, the very air we breathe. Poof. I was like, wow, how can we prevent that? I'm still here. So rather than shake my fist the rest of my life for something I cannot change at this point, I grieve, I continue to grieve. I will carry this with me the rest of my life, but my heart is open enough. It can also carry love, and love is more powerful than hatred, always. That they can never, ever defeat us, ever, because we can love more than they can hate. And there are many more of us than there are terrorists. So they can never win. They will never win. And we will show them what it is to be human, truly human.
And what was the reaction of people around you? Because when 9/11 happened, I remember as well listening from other people that there was some kind of hate that was going on around as well, that of certain communities being targeted as well. But when 26/11 happened, and when you choose to forgive and choose to spread love, that wasn't the natural reaction for a lot of people. Just people around you made sense of the situation and asked you, no, those are people who have committed acts of violence, and then by no means you should forgive them. Were there people around you who told you that?
Yes, I certainly, I was questioned by the media in that, and I do understand the anger and the moral outrage. It's very important to understand that forgiveness does not mean pardon. They should not be pardoned. Actions have consequences. The law of the land must be followed, honored. If they need to be caught, tried, arrested, trial, punishment, whatever that is, according to the law of the land. Now that I'm not saying the law should forgive them. No, the law should not forgive. No, they've lost their right to live as humans freely. Definitely. Ideally, they can be rehabilitated, but never let free. No. Not ever. No, they've lost that right. So that forgiveness doesn't mean that. And that's why people sometimes don't understand it. But I'm responsible for my life and what I want to wake up to every day. I'm living inside this body and having these feelings and these thoughts. And how do I want to live? I have a lot more years left. And can I bring some good into the world to counterbalance those acts of hatred? So I chose, in honoring my husband and daughter, to create a living memorial by bringing acts of love into the world, even with more focus. Most of us are good people in general. We make mistakes, different things, but there's no half-hearted, it's been said, there's no half-hearted terrorists, are there? So we then need to be fully focused on being the best human beings we could possibly be, and learn to live with love in all its forms, which might just mean patience. It might mean, forgiveness in some cases, to have harmony, sharing, receiving, connecting, listening, being willing to understand. And even what we will never understand, I will never understand how, or it can never be justified, these acts of violence. So on one hand, it seems unforgivable. And I understand that point of view. And everybody has a right to that. And if that's their understanding, then I respect that. But I respect people's differences. I respect their choices. But when it comes to violence, we cannot allow that. We cannot allow our fellow human beings to be killed if we have it within us to prevent it or stop it.
Yeah. And Kia, you mentioned this two important things, and I want to reiterate on that. One, you mentioned this important fact of just because you choose to uh, love someone doesn't mean the person who caused harm to the other person, the natural reaction should be hate. And that's where I think you brought in the book as well a very beautiful connection where you mentioned that how could you forgive a terrorist? Someone asked you, and you mentioned this important thing that we all come from the same source. We are all one human family. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about this connection where you mentioned that this one who chooses to
Yes,
pick up arms has forgotten this connection.
that's right. He forgot that connection, that he's part of a bigger human family. And that particular statement, we all come from the same source, we are one human family, came from a Persian poet named Sadi, Saadi. And I love that. And if we could remember that, then we remember the connection, then we will work out our differences without violence. We'll find a way. And I experienced the human family in the form of all of these communications, messages, emails that came to the Synchronicity website from all over the world, messages of love, people from all religions, Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, atheists, people of no religion, sending love, their prayers. And because something touched their hearts, and they got connected to their heart when they saw the picture of Alan and Naomi with the headline, "Father and Daughter Killed by a terrorist attack." Their hearts were open and they felt compassion, and they actually sat down at their keyboards and sent a message to the wife and mother. That it was like this tidal wave, a tsunami of love I felt envelop me. And I said, this is the world family. This is what we're really made of. This is it. And then I decided now I'm going to honor the world family by being the most loving human being I can possibly be with whoever I meet.
Yeah. And moving forward, I want to ask you that the period of when you lost someone at an unexpected time, it's so sudden, and actually things go so fast, especially in a case when there was a terrorist attack. Things happen really fast from your end, and you start chapter by slowing down. How much of that slowing down was needed to process that, and especially have time to actually grieve, because you don't get that because of this attention the media gives, your friends, your families. How much of personal connect that you had to unplug yourself to actually pause and think what has actually happened?
Yes. And this has happened over many, many years. And at first I couldn't go back to the rooms where we were living. It was too painful. So I was in a big house. I didn't form a nonprofit organization right away or anything like that. So that first year I had a lot of time and space. And it was really then the following year that I began to do some speaking as I was invited to speak. And we launched One Life Alliance. And I felt inspired to include the people of Mumbai to join me in that initiative. So it was very gradual. But my sons are grown, so they live in different places. They have their own lives. So I was alone a lot, actually. So, and life forced me to slow down. So I had to slow down. And I do give myself that time, especially around the anniversary of the attacks. It still hits me really hard after 13 years. So I take a lot of private time to just be with it and just let it be there. And that's a way of self-love. I never knew how to love myself before. I was a wife, mother, and you do this, you do that, and you just do what's needed to be done all the time. But all of that changed afterward. And I think we all could benefit from slowing down, taking time for ourselves, getting to know who we are. And then we can bring forth the best of who we are.
Yeah. And after that period of, you mentioned this thing about how that's important, slowing down to actually forgive. That's one of the very first steps to actually reflect and forgive. And you talk about this thing about the next chapter, which I don't go chapter by chapter, but again, these are such powerful chapters that I couldn't leave this chapter ahead, about the power of a smile. And uh, and you mentioned that the sharing of smiles can take place even in the saddest of times.
It's true. It is true. Excuse me, it seems contradictory, but I noticed if we bring, I mean, I wasn't doing all this right away, of course. It was later, upon reflection, I was sharing all of this, and I realized that even in the midst of this, people will come up and love and hug, and then you begin to talk about your loved one, and you can't help but smile because there were so many memories that brought joy to us. And so did, and I think it's important to, in these times, to allow times to an appreciation, the joys, and that is there. And also, just as a practice, to smile at our own flaws and mistakes, because every day we're humans, so we're not perfect. Every day I've learned, instead of being so hard on myself, and instead of, being the inner critic, that's a form of inner terrorism, actually, and focusing on all of my I give it a little smile. Oh, okay, I learned something from that. And that's how we can be forgiving to ourselves. And there is a power in a smile. And I experienced that, especially in Mumbai. I mean, I do feel like all over India, you have the most beautiful smiles in the world, and you give them generously.
Yeah. Since you mentioned about Mumbai, I want to ask you something personal about you choosing to go back to Mumbai. Wasn't that a painful experience and all that? And why did you choose to go back and spent years actually there?
Well, I actually felt closer to them there. It was sad. It was emotional. And I think there was a certain amount of self-protection. I didn't allow myself to feel that. That happened gradually. Like, I didn't go near the restaurant for a couple of years. I was in a hotel next door at the Trident, and that was easier. But because I was in Mumbai, remember, that's where they spent the last 10 days of their lives. And so they were the most alive. It's very ironic, paradoxical. They were the most alive they've ever been those last 10 days, because it was Mumbai, after all. And you know what these big cities in India are like: the colors, the sounds, the sights, the music that comes, it's all there. And the food and the smells, they were loving it. And I wanted to experience that too. So then I could join them in the joy. So then that helped me shift from under the table, where believe me, I've been there with them too, shift from under the table to being out in the streets of Mumbai, having some street food, watching a celebration going by where everybody's chanting and celebrating. Even this time of year, they celebrate every holiday with gusto. And it's just because it's a holiday celebration, they're all there. And I saw all of the different sections, it didn't matter about religion, celebrating each other's holiday. And then at Christmas, I saw skinny Indian Santas singing Christmas carols with Sunni Muslims watching them, clapping along. It was like, wow. To me, that's the human family right there. And I saw these things. And I know there's many more things there that of a darker nature that exist. But these other things are there also. So I want to focus and experience the joy, because what we appreciate, what we put our attention on, grows stronger in our lives. So I'm going to put my attention on the love, the joy, the smiles.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't deny that's a reality, not change that. I'm not going to bypass it and pretend it didn't happen. It's there, but I carry it with me, and it keeps in that my heart stays open.
And as moment you mentioned, you don't deny. Also, I want to come back to a chapter of acceptance where you give a very great definition, or like a very grounded definition, that acceptance is a willingness to meet ourselves and others without resistance or judgment. Uh, what was the initial resistance that came to you when you were trying to forgive or let go of the feeling of, uh, if a moment of anger you might have felt?
Yes, and this is something that it doesn't happen immediately, because naturally things happen every day in life, whether it's a big thing like that or our little things that happen every day that we don't like. And acceptance doesn't mean that we're going to then like it, or that somehow it's not a passive acceptance. It does start with a willingness. Okay, it's a willingness just to face reality. Like, this is in fact what happened, and to acknowledge I don't like it. But rather than being held down and being held back by what we don't like, and then fueling that anger, that, or frustration by talking about it all the time, and then and then we begin to have more and more experiences like that, or we find more opportunities to talk about it over and over. We get trapped in a story about it. I mean, it's a story of what happened, certainly, but instead of having to relive it over and over again, we can learn something from it. At least we can learn something. Oh, I know what not to do now. Oh, I know who not to hang out with. Oh, okay, I'm done with this person. Or, okay, I will make another choice. And that's a way of accepting and meeting life where it is true acceptance. And getting stuck there, then we move forward. I think acceptance allows us to move forward with life, so we continue to grow and to expand our experience of life.
Yeah. And most importantly, while going in the book, you mentioned in the interview as well about the virtue of patience, and it doesn't come it doesn't come instantly. It takes time. And you mentioned forgiveness is a process that takes time to assimilate as well. And people who have lost someone, they might go through a turmoil, right? About why should, and you mentioned in the previous chapter, you mentioned forgiveness is a choice, but the choice doesn't come naturally, it takes time. What was your experience of that patience? How much time does it actually take to actually explore this area of understanding and accepting?
Yes, well, and it's unique for each of us, but I would say I'm continuing to learn and understand and grow from this. So 13 years, I keep going to different levels and deeper of it. The more that I've accepted, and there's a lot of levels of acceptance, and forgiveness might take us years to get there. Now, I did hear, forgive them, they know not what they do. And I said, yes, I was willing to forgive. Did I really understand what that meant? No, probably not, because it's a terrorist. It's not someone I knew personally. How is that going to affect anything, my forgiveness? means nothing to the terrorist or the situation. But yet there's something within me that I needed to feel at peace about. And forgiveness was a key, an avenue that helped me connect more to my heart. And patience. It's like, okay, this too will pass. I might have a day where I feel sad, but okay, I know I can shift it. I can get, tomorrow's another day. You know, I don't have to, I can feel sad and also go about my day. I can have different choices today. And I just hold that tenderly inside of me, that sadness. Just love the sadness. And I'm not really a patient person by nature. I mean, I don't lose my temper all the time, but I like things to happen quickly. I like things to get done. And, you know, sometimes things, it's frustrating when things take a long time. And certainly we had to, everybody's patience was challenged during this pandemic. People had to work from home, things took longer. This book was supposed to be published a year ago, but everything, and I had to say, okay, I had to let go. Okay, let it go. Trust in perfect timing. So it does take time. And I think this is where acceptance comes in, because we can feel impatient and accept that we feel impatient, and immediately it'll settle down. And that will bring us into patience. So all these things work together. Slow down, smile, take a deep breath, just accept. Okay. Because we want to keep moving forward and we want to have success. I didn't really talk about success, but all these are actually keys to a successful life. Is a happy life, a life full of love, a life full of all the things that we value the most, which is really about love. It's about love and connection, how connected we are, how disconnected we are. The disconnected we have, the more disconnected, the unhappier we will be, the more capable we will be of harming ourselves or others. Bring the connection. Love, happiness, joy. So this book is really about creating those connections. Keep connecting. Oh, this one didn't work. Okay, try this. It didn't work to do this. Try this today. One of them will work.
Yeah. And moving forward, I want to talk about a little bit about the fact about acceptance as well. But a bit more about, you mentioned about simplification of life actually. And while I was going through the book, even though the book has been written from your perspective and about a personal loss and tragedy, some of these things are very applicable to people who might have, let's say, a breakup, or someone who was betrayed by someone else. And I remember this, someone telling me that the moment you start seeing intentions in other people's mistakes, you cannot truly forgive them. And even in your book, I feel a certain sense where you mentioned about simplifying it so that you can forgive them better. How does simplifying and not seeing why the person did what it did can actually lead you to forgiveness? Is this the sense that you're asking to forget when you're forgiving?
No, I think we don't forget. We might choose to not let something dominate our lives. And in order to not hate the one who broke your heart, because that's like, I understand that feeling. We've all been through it. How not to hate the one who broke your heart? Well, the first step is we have to love ourselves and not let love depend on that person, because that disempowers us. And it complicates our lives when we hold grudges. So that's why I added simplify in there, because I realized life flows easier when we've simplified. And it's about creating a balance. So, we have creating balance is also in the book. And one thing it's all interwoven and interconnected. but I like to keep things simple. So it's complicated and complicating to hold grudges, and then to always be talking about the other person and remembering only that. It's better to clear it out. In fact, there are things you can do that, and this is not in the book, but you can empower yourself in the shower. You can have a shower and empower yourself. And as the water's streaming down, you can clear out all the yucky stuff, the hatred and anger, because you don't want that person to take over your life just because they've made a choice that you did not like or agree with and that hurt you. You just acknowledge it, but sweep them out at that point and bring your attention to what does bring you joy, because you are not going to get joy from that person. They've already proven that to you. So what did you learn from the person? Where does love come from? Did it come from them? Did my laughter, my happiness and joy come from them? No, it came from within me. Yes, they were reflecting that to me, and I loved being with that person. I will miss that person. I think it's important to acknowledge that. And it's helpful to write letters to the person, but you might never, I would advise not sending the letters, but write it all out. Write the letters, celebrate the relationship, the joys that it brought, and maybe they're doing you a favor. Now you're free. Now you're free. Once they've walked away, let you go, betrayed you, acknowledge the hurt, the anger, all of it. But then, if you can, when you're ready, let it go. Hold on to it for as long as you need to. For as long as you need to let it churn in there a while, fine. But I would say breathe into it, and allow yourself to feel it as fully as possible. Give yourself some alone time. And if you need to cry, scream, yell, do it, pound a pillow, feel it. You'll be amazed at some point it's going to settle down. And that's how you empower yourself, and let the shower clean it out. But I do, and that simplifies life, because just think, people carry things, emotional burdens. It just complicates. We can't think clearly if we're carrying all that around inside of us. As soon as you let it go, your mind clears up. Then get inspired by other ideas and people and other things that you can bring, creative things. Otherwise, it's going to bog you down. Simplify.
You also mentioned about trust in the book.
That's challenging. Trust is challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially someone, when you are in a cycle of life, and some element, especially we are all in a written format of trust, either with God, either with our family members, either with friends, relatives. And when that cycle breaks, like a tragic incident happens, does your trust factor also decreases with the person? Let's say God decreases. How do you connect back to something like that and go again trusting the person? Is trusting more courageous than even loving a person back?
That's right. That's why I love the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, that self-trust is the secret of success. Now, a lot of times we don't trust ourselves, but I think we're not trusting the small self. If we go back to essence, sorry if this is jiggling, there's a dog on the bed I'm sitting. If we go to essence, if we go to the source, there is something within us, some aliveness, a consciousness, a deeper, that we are aware, we're awake, we're alive. The source of life within us, we can connect to that. So that's not dependent on what our beliefs are. Maybe our beliefs will spring from some of that, and how we were raised, where we were born, what we were taught as children. But there's something beneath the belief. That's the one thing you can trust. People, you cannot really trust them, but you can trust yourself. If you trust yourself at that deeper level, You will trust who you can do business with and who not to do business with, because your intuition will increase. Who to be in relationship with, who not to be in relationship with. Who to give your love, who not to give your love. But keep tuning into that. That's why you need to simplify so that that's a clear channel of avenue. I don't mean like a mystical channel coming from the outside. I mean, it's something within our own heart. And I think the heart can be trusted. That's another beautiful line from The Little Prince. It is only through the heart that one can see rightly. So when we're ever in doubt, even just putting our hand on our heart in a private space, breathing, let the heart guide you. That you can trust. But trust will be broken in our outer world. That's inevitable. And we will always be, there's an oscillation of trust and distrust. So we come back to center, that which doesn't move, the anchor. Because up on the waves, they're going to flow. The ships, some of them will get turned over. We will get thrown out of some ships. We'll have to swim. But we trust. We can always come back to this. There's one thing you could trust, and just keep coming back to that and let it guide you. That's your inner compass. Inner compass. And I wrote this book because these are all the things that I use to bring myself back to that. So I remind myself to trust on the big capital T trust. There's little trusts that you're wise not to trust certain things. You're wise, but you use the bigger trust to inform you of that. Does that make sense?
It does actually. I have three last questions. One of them is actually about gratitude and selfless giving, actually mentioned in this book, actually.
Selfless service.
Yes, selfless service. Interestingly, when you actually going through a phase where you lost someone, when we actually get up from the bed, the first thing of gratitude comes is, well, I'm doing well. I'm so glad to see another ray of sunshine in my life. That's the first gratitude. But when you get up and you wake up and you realize you're lost, how do you mend that thing? And you come to, again, the format of gratitude and selfless service, of giving something when you lost something from your side.
I think the first thing that comes to me is that I'm alive and I'm still here. I've been given the gift of life, and for that I am grateful. I am sad. Because I'm sad, it means I love. I have loved. I feel grief because I feel loss because I have loved. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the love. I'm grateful that I'm alive and that I can love. And to me, the sadness and the grief is a gift that reminds us that we are alive and that we can feel. We're human. We can actually feel. I think the greatest tragedy is when people lose their ability or capacity to feel. A terrorist has lost. Can you imagine? And not only the terrorist himself, but those who planned it, they're equally terrorists. They just weren't holding the weapons. But imagine the loss. They can't feel. Imagine living like that. They cannot feel. Wow. But we can feel. I can feel. So I'm grateful for that. I can open my eyes and look at the blue sky, the palm trees, pet the dog, talk to you. And, it was ironic in a way that India, I found I was reborn in India where my family died. Because in India, it just throbbing with life. I did feel kind of dead inside for a while. And it was hard to feel grateful for everything. I didn't wake up with those kind of thoughts like I just told you. No, it was dark for a while. Yeah, I've had live in darkness for a while, but I think other people around me helped me heal. So much love came my way, and love began to dominate. I think love is what light is, and light will always overpower darkness. Darkness won't prevail. So I'm grateful for that, and that I have an opportunity. I'm grateful to Penguin Books for publishing this, and for young men like yourself for being so sensitive and actually reading this book. I thank you so much for reading it and sharing this with other people. I think that's beautiful. That's a gift.
I'm actually glad that you wrote the book, and I could feel a certain sense of, as I was telling, a missing link when we actually go and talk to people. So we engage in violence actually. And my next question is actually that about compassion. You mentioned a very important virtue of compassion, and you interlinked with love. Uh, so I will interlink the idea of love, and you mentioned in the last chapter where you talking about love as well, about you say that all the chapters that you mentioned stems from love. And it's one of
Yes.
those feelings that we're born with, actually. The other feelings we acquire while we're growing up. But compassion is something when you mentioned about a terrorist, a person who even planned the attack is also a terrorist. And one who just not points a gun, but also think of killing someone. Lose that compassion. But also in a world where we're so fast paced, are we losing a little bit of compassion towards looking at the other person, understanding the sensibility? And how do
It's
we still hold that to people, like make people compassionate?
I think you're right. We observe this, that we lose that when we allow our lives to get so busy, and we're just bombarded by so much every day. And we feel pressure to make money, to survive, to provide, to live, all of these things. That's where then we have to come back to slowing down. We have to slow down to allow the connection. And the more connected we are, we will feel the compassion. We'll feel it. We'll connect to humans, and we'll see people as humans, fellow human beings that have the same kinds of feelings, doubts, fears, frustrations, needs that we do. We all have that. And we all look so different. We have different beliefs and ways of living and cultures and all of that. But yet there's a human being inside all that. And I think the more we can connect to that, the more we naturally feel compassionate. We naturally then would like to treat others as we would want to be treated. It's what we call the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Every religion has some statement along those lines. Treat others, love your neighbor as yourself. But that means you got to love yourself first, so then you can actually love your neighbor. I think it goes the other way around. Love yourself, then you love your neighbor.
Yeah. So before I end the podcast, I have two last questions for you. One is, were you actually able to make peace with what happened, and actually able to forgive the terrorists involved in the attack? And second, I want to leave our viewers whom are as old as Naomi would have been at this time. So most of them are university students who watch our podcast. Uh, what's one message that you want to leave them with
Terrorists,
and make peace with what happened?
and make peace with what happened. And that's been my whole process all of this time. And I think it's an ongoing process. But yes, I feel like but it's a choice I make every day. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because this enables me to be at peace, to live with love, to feel some compassion for what was lost in the terrorists, the disregard that there's a human being under there that we can't even see. Where's the human being? You can't even see a human being in there. It's like, where are you? What happened to you? Who are you? Like, whoa, where is it? It's very hard to see that. So it's that their disregard for that I'm forgiving, and I feel compassion for their disregard for their own humanity. It was years later, only in the past few years, when there was a book that came out, Stories of Strength, and it was Indian Express, I think, put this out. But and I think it was in this one, or might have been, there's been other books about the attacks. There's a lot of them. But one of the books showed all of the terrorists. So Ajmal Kasab, was not the one who killed my husband. I mean, he was a terrorist, so he represented them all. So he became a symbol for them all, because he was alive for the next 4 years before he was executed. In the book, there is I thought, oh my God. 2 of these, one of them held that gun that killed my family. And the pictures, they were all mangled because they were pictures taken post-mortem. It was the most awful feeling to look at them. Like, these weren't even human beings. And I had to ask myself, I was horrified, and it brought up a lot. And I said, okay, how do you, where's forgiveness? Where's forgiveness? Like, look at all and so I had to go deeply into that and feel it. That was a really yucky experience to go into it. But to get out of the yucky experience, I said, okay, you're gone now. You're no longer here. And I'm so sorry that you got yourself to a point where you made that choice, and that you collaborated with these monsters that planned this attack. And the monsters forgot that they were human, so they chose to become monsters. They have to live with that. That's a life sentence right there. So that's how I would deal with forgiveness over that, and that I choose peace. You will not take my peace away from me. You will not take my peace from my heart. You will not shut down my heart. I hold the key to that. I might shut down my heart, but that's on me. But I hold the key to open it. So every day I choose to open my heart. Every day. Every day. So that's my choice. And so peace is an outcome of an open heart, because an open heart gives love. An open heart is compassionate. An open heart is a peaceful heart.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. I had a lovely experience reading the book, actually, and I think everyone should pick up a copy. I will put the link in the description box for people to go and pick up a copy. Thank you so much, Kia.
Yeah, and once you read it, pass it on. Just pass it to someone you love. Let it be a book that gets given away. That would be great. Thank you so much for having me and for listening.
Thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. It's actually a very lovely experience speaking to you. Hope to host you sometime again in the future to talk more about forgiveness and love.
Definitely. Hopefully we'll meet sometime in India.
Sure,
Beautiful.
definitely. Sure, definitely. And have a great Christmas weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.